This week we're going to continue to explore the steps needed in the creation and delivery of a strategic communications plan. You'll recall last week's lesson where we talked about the research phase of communications planning, how to properly define our problem, how to conduct a SWOT analysis, and provide an environmental assessment. We also learned how to set SMART goals and strategies. This week, you'll learn about the rest of the steps in communications planning. We'll start with breaking down our audiences. Remember our business writing discussion about the importance of knowing who your audience is and writing to them? This is where we determine who our audiences are for the purpose of our communication plan. Typically in these types of exercises, we call them publics or stakeholders. In marketing planning, they're often referred to as target demographics, but they are, after all, really audiences. We call them publics because that term recognizes them as a group of people with an interest in an issue, an organization, or an idea. They don't need to be formally organized, and most of them are biased toward taking action on their own interests. For communication planning, a public typically represents a person or group of people who recognize or who will recognize that there's an issue or impact with the thing that is the focus of your plan. There's an element of awareness and information seeking. Secondly, publics will believe that they have influence or the ability to do something about what it is your plan is about. And finally, they must care about the outcome. And that doesn't mean that you're actually successful in delivery of your plan. It may actually be the opposite of that drives these folks. Your publics may be internal to your organization or external. It can be helpful when thinking through your publics to think about these groups separately so that you don't get too overwhelmed. Not all publics are the same, so when you're thinking through your plan, you need to bear this in mind. Communications theorist James Grunig developed the situational theory of publics, which is really aimed at explaining when people communicate and how our communication can be most effective when we think about them. Grunig basically said that all people can be classified into one of four groups. The first is a non-public. This is where people have absolutely no recollection or awareness that there is a problem. There really are no consequences in the minds of these folks. So if you're developing a communications plan, let's say for our flu shot study, would you include perhaps school teachers as a public? Probably not. The next group is the latent public. For these people, the problem may be there, but the public is not yet aware. Grunig's third group is the aware public. These are people who recognize the problem or issue. So in our case study, these are folks who know that immunization levels at St. Lawrence are actually low, but they aren't doing anything about it. Is communication required for this group? Finally, we have the active public. This is a group that's organizing and actively responding to the problem. In our example, perhaps it's a group of staff who don't believe in the value of vaccination, or maybe it's a group of people who are doing everything they can to get staff vaccinated. What kind of communication may be required for them? Now, it's important to realize that where a public sits today may not be where they are tomorrow. Someone who may be part of a latent public may move very quickly to the active stage. So thinking through the various publics that you'll need to communicate with can be daunting. It helps to break them into three groups so that you're able to concentrate on them and to develop messages that will be effective with them and will help you allocate your resources more appropriately. The first of these three groups are your primary publics. These are the people who need to know and who you'll be creating tactics and messages to communicate with. From Grunig's model, think about your aware and active publics. Maybe you've got some latent publics, depending on your topic or issue, that you'll want to include here as well. A secondary audience is made up of people who you would like to know. And finally, the third group are influencers. These are the people you want to ensure know and who are aware of your messages. Typically in corporate communications planning, This group can include the media or perhaps advocacy groups that you can bring on board. These groups may sit anywhere along Grunig's situational theory list of publics. When it comes to allocating resources and developing messages, you want to have a focused group of stakeholders. As Bill Gates says, my success, part of it, certainly, is that I've focused on a few things. A rule of thumb is to really focus on no more than 5 groups in your primary audience. You may have a couple more in your secondary audience, and 1 or 2 enablers. So we're going to move on now to the development of key messages, and this can be a real fun and quite challenging part. Key messages are positioning statements. Typically, you don't want to have more than 3 main key messages at any given time. Now, these messages can be nuanced to meet a specific public's requirements, but remember the rule of 3s. People tend to remember lists in groups of 3, such as stop, drop, and roll. Key messages need to be memorable. Make sure you include exactly what you want your audience to remember. And to get the attention of the members of your publics, make sure you address what's in it for them. Are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs? It's the psychology theory that addresses human motivation as people go through the basic needs to get to constant betterment. The first thing that people need to do is to satisfy their physiological needs, so they need food and shelter. Then they move into safety, security of their body, employment, resources, etc. And then to love and belonging, family, friendship, then to esteem, and then finally into self-actualization. Think about where on that scale the thing that you may need to communicate sits, and appeal to it. So in our flu shot example, we know that people are innately concerned about their safety. If we were talking about a change in work, they may be concerned about the security of their employment. These are significant issues, and you'll gain attention of your public by answering that question of what's in it for them. Your key messages need to have stick. You need to use them often and repetitively. And your messages need to be written in a language that your publics can understand and remember. Remember how we talked recently in terms of how to write clearly and effectively? Finally, they've got to be believable. If they aren't, then you're not going to have any credibility with your audience, and you'll not only have wasted your time in creating the strategy, but you may actually damage your reputation for future communication efforts.